Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a case that's really got it all. Data drama, office politics, some unexpected heroes, and one very bold manager who wants to put performance right up on the wall for everyone to see.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
We're talking about Vertisoft's critical call center. It's where metrics meet reality. And, well, that line between motivation and maybe public shaming gets very, very thin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got this fascinating cast of characters, like you mentioned, from a spiky-haired rock star outperformer who surprises everyone,
Right.
to a once reliable veteran who seems to be slipping down the charts. It really highlights the human element just bubbling beneath all that data.
Absolutely.
So our mission today really is to unpack what makes teams tick, what causes them to maybe break down, and whether publishing employee rankings, in this specific situation is genius or just, well, plain reckless.
Making sense of the numbers, the people, the chaos.
Precisely. We're going to try and make sense of the numbers, understand the people behind them, and navigate all that chaos in between.
Okay, so to really grasp this dilemma, let's set the scene first with Vertisoft Inc. This isn't just any company, right?
No, definitely not.
It's a specialized software developer. They focus on these niche verticals, things like architects, the airline industry.
Yeah, very specific markets.
And we're talking significant numbers, over US $1.1 billion in annual sales. Really high profit margins.
Impressive stuff.
And growing like crazy, 30 to 40% per year, and a huge part of their recent success. It's been directly tied to the excellence of their customer service and technical support team.
That's key.
And that team is coordinated out of their call center in Moncton, New Brunswick, up in Canada.
Right. And what's fascinating here, I think, is Vertisoft's very strategic choice of Moncton. It wasn't random.
Why Moncton specifically?
Well, they picked it for its excellent education levels, for one, and also the high-quality tech infrastructure that was there, partly because New Brunswick had this provincial policy supporting telecom firms and call centers.
Ah, okay. Government support played a role.
Big time. And they also got provincial grants for training and development, so it provided a really strong foundation for them to build on.
Interesting. So Moncton wasn't just a cost play. It was a strategic move for talent and infrastructure.
Absolutely. Foundational.
Yeah.
But here's where things start to get a bit more complicated. While Vertisoft was, initially really pleased with the quality of their Moncton employees, they were starting to face emerging labor shortages and increasing labor costs, actually rising faster than core inflation.
Okay, so pressure building.
Exactly. Which added this real urgency to the need to drive greater productivity. And it's also key to remember their business model. The frontline recs, they handle about 90% of all calls.
Right.
The really complex issues. Those get referred to about a dozen software specialists down in Dallas.
Got it. So growing company, great service reputation, but rising costs and labor pressure sounds like the perfect setup for someone to start thinking about metrics.
You nailed it. And that's exactly what Brian Jenkins, the call center manager, did in early 2007, after a couple of years basically operating without any formal metrics.
Which is kind of surprising in itself for a call center.
It is, yeah. But he decided to implement three pretty simple measures to track performance.
Okay, what were they?
First one was time to assist to completion, basically call duration or CD, just the average time a rep took to resolve a customer's issue.
Makes sense.
Second, time to refer, or ref. That's the average time it took a rep to refer a client onwards to one of those technical support specialists in Dallas.
Okay.
And third, customer satisfaction, CS, a rating from 1, poor, to 5, outstanding. This came from a computer-based survey sent out to every 10th customer.
Right. Pretty standard stuff for call center metrics, but new for them.
Exactly. And the rationale behind choosing these specific ones was all about striking a balance. They didn't want reps just rushing customers off the phone to hit a time target, because that hurts satisfaction.
Oh, sure. Customer service is expensive. You need quality.
Right. But they also needed efficiency. And they wanted to make sure reps weren't spending forever trying to solve problems way outside their depth. So the goal was encourage timely referrals.
Without people just dumping calls to make their own numbers look good.
Precisely. You don't want over-referring just for personal productivity gains. It's also important to note conversations were randomly recorded and audited for quality, kind of standard practice.
Okay.
And employees were told these metrics were being tested. But critically, no direct link was initially made to their performance appraisal or, their pay.
Okay. So just testing the waters initially.
Sort of dipping a toe in.
So what happened when Brian Jenkins looked at those first 3 months of data, July to September? What did he find?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The picture that emerged was surprising. He had this real mix of emotions. Pleased, concerned, and yeah, quite surprised.
Okay, let's break that down. The good news first.
The good news was that call duration, the CD, was actually dropping. So calls were getting shorter.
Good.
And somewhat counterintuitively maybe, customer satisfaction, CS, was increasing at the same time.
Huh. Shorter calls, happier customers.
Seems so. Plus, reps were recognizing faster when calls were outside their scope and referring them more quickly. That ref time was improving too. The message, don't try to fix what you are unable to fix, that seemed to be working.
Okay, so far so good. But you said he was also concerned.
Yeah, that's the flip side. The concern was that, a substantial number of employees were scoring low on these measures and just weren't improving over those 3 months.
The classic performance distribution tale.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is always a challenge when you introduce something new like this.
And the surprises. You mentioned surprises.
Oh yeah, the real revelations came from looking at specific individuals. That really brought the data to life. Take Natasha Leeming, for instance.
Okay, who was she?
She was a veteran employee, really instrumental in setting up the Moncton Center from day one. Always willing to train others, help out, you know the type.
The reliable backbone.
Exactly. She'd recently returned from maternity leave, and her numbers, well, they stood out, but not in a good way. Her call duration was 8.3 minutes.
Wow, compared to...
More than double that of a top performer like Joshi Parkano we'll mention later. Her customer satisfaction was slightly below average, 3.5, and her time to refer was long, 5.6 minutes.
Ouch. And Jenkins.
Jenkins couldn't help but wonder, if motherhood was impacting her performance.
Which is, yeah, a tricky assumption to make.
A classic managerial trap, right? Jumping to conclusions about personal circumstances instead of maybe digging deeper or offering support.
Definitely. Who else stood out?
Then there was Bob LeBlanc, described as the life and soul of the place. A senior technical service rep, actually had a business degree.
Sounds like a solid guy.
Yeah, but despite his technical skills, his numbers, especially on CS and time to refer, were poor. And interestingly, he was also close to retirement.
Another potential factor. Okay, so those were some concerning cases. What about surprises on the positive side?
Absolutely. Joshi Parkana, recent immigrant, exceptionally productive, really low call duration, 3.1 minutes, high customer satisfaction, 4.4, and quick to refer issues upwards when needed. Just stellar numbers.
Yeah, a real standout.
Totally. And then there was John Chi-Chi Edwards. This is the guy Jenkins had reservations about hiring, describes a young biker type with spiked hair.
Okay, first impressions.
Right. But guess what? Chi-Chi had a perfect 5.0 customer satisfaction score. Handled calls super efficiently, moved them off quickly for further help if needed. Jenkins himself noted, so much for first impressions.
Huh. That's fantastic. Shows you can't judge performance by appearance.
Not at all. That contrast, between the respected veteran leaning, struggling, and the biker type Edwards excelling, it really underscores how data can just overturn your assumptions.
Yeah, powerful reminder.
Definitely. Don't judge a book by its cover, or maybe a call center rep by their hairstyle or tenure.
So Jenkins has this mix. Overall trends look okay, but some worrying low performers and some surprising high performers. What does he do next?
He decides to dig deeper. He extracted data specifically to compare the top 10 and bottom 10 performers based on their average call duration for that July to September period.
Focusing on the extremes.
Exactly. And the differences he found were, stark, which often happens when you drill into the tails of any performance distribution.
How stark?
The bottom performers, they were actually getting progressively poorer across those 3 months. By September, their average call duration was a whopping 75.1% longer than the top 10 performers.
75% longer, wow.
Yeah, compared to only a 31.1% difference back in July. So the gap was widening significantly. And their customer satisfaction scores also declined relative to the top group, 26.7% lower in September versus 21.9% lower in July.
So they weren't just low, they were trending downwards.
Right. While some individuals in that bottom group might have had an okay month here or there, consistent poor performance really defined the very bottom.
And the top 10%.
They were actually improving in both call duration and customer satisfaction, which is great, but it's worth noting there was still a considerable range even within that top group. It wasn't monolithic.
Okay. What about the referral time?
That time to refer metric, the ref point, it was less clear-cut. There was high variance in both the top and bottom groups, although generally speaking, the better performers did tend to refer earlier.
So a huge performance gap opening up between the top and bottom, but you mentioned there were about 100 staff. What did the overall picture look like? Was it just these extremes?
That's a really critical point here. A statistical analysis showed that for all three measures across all the time periods, the distribution was actually normal. A classic bell-shaped curve.
Ah, okay, so most people were clustered around the average.
Exactly. Most people in the middle with fewer performers out of the high and low extremes. And this is important because it suggests that, statistically speaking, some individuals will always naturally fall into the lower percentile, almost regardless of effort.
Right, which makes the idea of highlighting those bottom performers potentially problematic.
Potentially unfair, maybe demotivating, especially if it's just a function of natural variation within the group. It raises questions about publicly identifying that statistical tail end.
So faced with all this, the widening gap, the bell curve, the individual stories, what does Brian Jenkins decide to do? He felt he had to act, right?
Yeah, despite having, maybe limited information beyond these numbers, he felt the pressure to act. His first thought was pretty straightforward. Personally recognize the top performers, give them thank yous, maybe small acknowledgments.
Nice touch. Okay.
His next step was to plan conversations with the low performers, either talk to them directly or maybe through their supervisors to understand why they were struggling and if they could improve.
Trying to figure out the root cause.
Exactly. But he also noted something interesting. The supervisors themselves hadn't been great at performance management without the metrics. They seemed hesitant to actually confront employees.
Especially in a small community like Moncton, maybe, where everyone knows each other.
That was his suspicion. Yeah, makes those conversations potentially awkward.
Okay, so that leads him to the big idea.
That leads him to the big, bold idea. Something he'd apparently learned at a management seminar, this idea of a best practice. Publishing employee performance metrics in a clearly visible way. On the wall.
Wow, just out there for everyone.
Out there, he envisioned everyone seeing their relative performance, particularly the bottom 10% seeing exactly where they stood compared to their higher-ranked colleagues. His thinking was literally, why not publish the results for everyone to see?
Okay, so that's a move. What was his reasoning? Just shame people into improving.
Well, his reasoning, as he saw it, was rooted in belief in competitive instincts. He genuinely believed this transparency would tap into that. He figured people in the middle would see the top performers and strive to get there. The top performers would want to stay on top, maintain their supremacy.
Okay.
And those drifting towards the bottom, they'd see their position and be motivated to improve. He felt he wouldn't even need to actively raise the bar himself.
Just publishing the results would do it.
That was his theory. Simply publishing the results would ensure that people raised the bar themselves. He even took it a step further. He considered that if some people couldn't improve, well, maybe they'd be better off seeking work elsewhere, especially given the intense global competition Vertisoft faced in technical support.
Oof. So improve or get out.
That seems to be the underlying message, yeah. He saw it as a straightforward path to continuous improvement in making Vertisoft more competitive.
But couldn't Jenkins argue, though, that by not highlighting performance, especially when supervisors are maybe hesitant to have those tough conversations, the company is basically just enabling mediocrity, letting things slide?
Oh, absolutely. That's precisely the counter-argument he'd make, and it's a strong one if you're looking at it from a purely results-driven perspective. Why let poor performance fester?
Right.
However, this bold move faced immediate and strong opposition from Sunita Prakash, the head of human resources.
Ah, the HR pushback. I figured that was coming. This sounds like a classic HR versus operations kind of showdown.
It absolutely had that feel. And Sunita Prakash's concerns immediately brought up the human cost of such a policy.
What were her main points?
She raised several key questions. First, what if there were valid reasons for non-performance? Personal problems, maybe a lack of specific training, things the numbers alone don't show.
Good point. Context matters.
Definitely.
Okay.
Second, was it actually right to expose people to potential criticism and even ridicule from their peers? What does that do to morale and team cohesion?
Yeah, the potential for public shaming.
Exactly. Third, she flagged the reputation risk. In a tight labor market like Moncton was becoming, did Vertisoft really want to be seen as this hard-nosed employer where only numbers mattered?
Could make recruitment harder down the line.
For sure. And finally, a really significant risk, unionization. Rapidly growing call centers are often prime targets for union organizers, and a move like this could easily fuel a campaign.
So Prakash saw a lot of downsides. What did she suggest instead?
She suggested a much more nuanced approach. Use the numbers, yes, but use them as just one factor in the more general appraisal process, conducted maybe semi-annually.
Integrating it, not isolating it.
Right. Her belief was that just knowing that their quartile performance is heavily weighted in their overall appraisal would be sufficient motivation without the need for public display.
So the HR perspective is leaning heavily on empathy, company image, avoiding legal or union trouble, a more holistic view. How did Jenkins respond to that?
Well, Jenkins acknowledged Prakash had a point. He wasn't completely dismissive. But he countered pretty strongly. He said something like, surely people had been ranked and rated all their lives in school, in sports. Why should this stop in a workplace?
Interesting point. Appealing to lifelong competition.
Yeah, he genuinely believed it would bring out those positive competitive instincts. And he added that, sure, there might be some nervousness among non-performers, but that would not be such a bad thing. A little pressure might be good, in his view.
Okay. But Prakash suggested using the existing appraisal system more effectively.
Right, but Jenkins was actually quite cynical about the company's existing annual or semi-annual performance appraisal system.
Why?
He felt it was largely ineffective because, in practice, almost everyone was just rated in the top one or two categories. Grade inflation, essentially.
The classic everyone's above average problem.
Exactly. He even checked the records. And guess what? Both Natasha Leeming and Bob LeBlanc, despite their recent poor performance on the new metrics, had been rated 4s on a 5-point scale in that old system.
Wow. So the old system wasn't actually differentiating performance at all.
Not effectively, no. Which, you could argue, strengthened Jenkins' case for needing a more objective, transparent measure.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole situation really highlights a fundamental management dilemma, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's that core tension between, on the one hand, pure, transparent metrics designed to drive efficiency and maybe weed out underperformers.
Numbers driven.
Yeah, very numbers driven. And on the other hand, a more holistic, human-centered approach to performance management that considers context, well-being, and potential unintended consequences.
Nurturing versus pure measurement.
Kind of. And what's often missed, I think, is that both sides here, both Jenkins and Prakash, they likely have the same ultimate goals of productivity, a successful company, maybe even employee well-being in their own way. But their assumptions about what motivates people are just fundamentally different.
Leading to vastly different strategies.
Exactly. It's that classic numbers versus nurturing debate. And it's especially sharp when, like at Vertisoft, the existing appraisal systems might not have been doing a great job in the first place.
So we've really unpacked the Vertisoft case now. On one side, you have Brian Jenkins, the manager, really eager to ignite competitiveness, drive what he calls continuous improvement through this, well, radical transparency of publishing metrics.
Putting it all out there.
And on the other side, you have Sunita Prakash from HR waving these big red flags about morale, the company's reputation, especially in that tight labor market, and even the serious threat of unionization.
Which brings us, and you listening, to a really crucial question, I think. What is the true cost of raising the bar when it involves publicizing individual performance in such a stark, maybe even brutal way?
Yeah. Is that potential gain in productivity really worth the risk? The risk of demotivation, resentment, maybe even losing experienced people like Natasha Leeming, who might just be going through a tough patch but have a lot still to offer.
It's a massive trade-off. Do you optimize for short-term metric gains or long-term team health and stability?
It definitely leaves us to wonder. In this world that's increasingly driven by data, by metrics, by dashboards, how do you truly balance that relentless drive for efficiency with the complex, often messy, unpredictable human element that makes up any real team?
Yeah, what kind of environment, when you really think about it, truly fosters sustained excellence in the long run? Is it the transparent pressure cooker or something else entirely?
A question with no easy answers, but one every manager probably faces sooner or later.